My name is Tim Strong, and I serve as the Regional Agriculture Finance Advisor and help with the branchless banking initiatives on John Magne's team, and I'm based out of my home in Malawi, which you guys have actually had a chance to hear quite a lot about today. But I want to, before introducing our panel, just take a minute to recenter this, reground this. We work in financial services, and we're talking about ending extreme poverty. We're talking about ending world hunger. But I have a little secret that I want to share with you, is that financial services alone will not do either of those. Financial services paired with technical assistance and with ongoing training and market support won't do that. And building consortiums with like-minded partners won't do that either. It's actually the clients on the ground that are ending those things. They are the ones that are bringing us to the next space and will be the solution for Africa and for the rest of the world when it comes to agriculture, to environment, to world hunger, and to extreme poverty. So that's my little intro. I had a lot more planned, but we're going to keep it going fast-paced, I think is the mandate for today. So I'm going to go back to this because I accidentally just cleared my notes. Sorry. Always hit the lock button before you start waving things around, right? But you know, the big story that's coming out now is that currently, first number is 65% of the global uncultivated land that remains in the world is in sub-Saharan Africa. 54 million children in sub-Saharan Africa are stunted due to malnutrition. This is the future of the world, right? And it's not progressing without the right nutrition, without the right agricultural systems to support it, and without the markets to bring it to fruition. 40% of the current harvest potential for smallholder farmers is where they're operating at. They could increase by 60% more based on what we currently know in science. I'm hoping it gets much further than that as we grow into this. And the current gap in sub-Saharan smallholder farmer agricultural financing needs is $26 billion, is the gap. That's what we're not reaching. That's the untapped potential. And I'll say this again later on in the panel. Norman Borlaug, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his advance in agriculture and his crop breeding, his favorite quote of mine is that potential has never fed a single person. So how do we move this beyond potential? So as an introduction, in addition to the de Jongs who you've just met, and you got to hear a bit of their story, I'm also very excited to welcome up several other guests in this space. So we're going to go a little bit out of order and bounce around because my notes are outdated. Sorry, y'all. So in the middle here is Jeff Anderson, and he's served as the Manager of Global Citizenship and Strategy Planning at John Deere, and is currently taking over a lot of the implementation of programs throughout sub-Saharan Africa based out of South Africa, potentially. I'll let him, he knows it better than I do. Alicia Black, who's next to me, is the Director of the Global Food and Agricultural Program at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Prior to this, she has worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, building both strategic partnerships for agricultural development. Next to this Jeff is another Jeff, so this is going to bear with me through the panel on this. Jeff Dykstra is the founder and CEO of Partners in Food Solutions, and it's an organization that brings together food companies, donors, NGOs, investors, the government, and more to improve food security. Did we get that right?
Close.
All right, so this is our panel, and it's a very impressive group of people, and I'm very excited to dive in this conversation. And I think we're going to start off with our first question. I've been told not to spend too much time talking about financial products. That's my passion. That's where I see us in our niche. And I would beg with any of you, if you're interested to learn more, pull us aside, let's talk about it. But today we're just focusing on agriculture and hunger in this spot. So because we have someone from John Deere, I decided to start with a quote from the CEO of John Deere, which John Magne and myself were lucky enough to meet in person last week, 2 weeks ago. But Sam Allen of John Deere, his quote is that the road out of poverty requires the commitment of individuals. It starts with one person. So in that light, I'd like to ask actually the whole panel, and we can just go in order running through. All of us touch hunger and agriculture and farmers from different sides of the puzzle: institutional, organizational, practitioner, and more. So what do you see as your role in improving agriculture, investing in farmers, and fighting hunger? Can we start with you, Alicia?
Sure. So I'm very happy to be here. It's exciting to see all these supporters of Opportunity International because I get to run into them folks working on the ground with opportunity like you when I travel. So it's a pleasure to be here. In my current role, I think the main role the Chicago Council on Global Affairs is playing is kind of keeping the message about what the data is teaching us active and educating different groups of people that are high priority. So obviously the general public who cares about these issues, we do a lot of programming here in Chicago. We put out a lot of publications online that are explaining kind of the nuances of what we know about agricultural development and new innovations, what direction things are going with hunger and food insecurity around the world, what's the gap that still needs to be filled. So there's a lot of public education materials. We spend a lot of time working with partners like Opportunity International, like corporate partners, to sort of make sure that the message about why there should be engagement on food security and agricultural development should be broad-based and across sectors, because it touches a lot of interests. So there's a moral reason to do this, but there's also economic reasons for the US and many other countries around the world to engage. And there are reasons related to national security. And so we try to make sure that we make the broad case for why there should be engagement. So we spend time with policymakers in Washington, D.C. We spend a lot of time with members of Congress and also the administration. We increasingly are working with governments overseas doing the same kind of thing. And then we're partnering. Once a year, we do a very large event in Washington, D.C., where we bring together that full spectrum and a lot of heads of state and different innovators that have breakout innovations we want people to see. And we try to keep the narrative moving forward. So I think our role right now, the one I get to play, is a lot of public education and making the case for investing in agriculture.
Great. So thank you for the introduction, Tim. And on behalf of John Deere, I'd like to thank the Opportunity employees and board of directors for allowing me to represent John Deere here today. When you think about the question that Tim posed, you can argue that John Deere has been working to solve hunger for 180 years. And it started just about an hour and a half from here, where John Deere invented the moldboard plow. And we think there may be no other company or institution in the world that's done more in terms of improving productivity in the last 180 years, including recent investments as early as September, where we acquired a company called Blue River Technologies. Amazing technology, a tractor-attached sprayer that goes down through the field, identifies the weeds specifically, identifies their stage of growth, and determines whether to spray them or not. It really is amazing. It's awe-inspiring, and you've heard a lot about technology and innovation today. I'm convinced that will continue to advance at a rapid scale. So Deere's obviously invested in this. From a personal standpoint, we believe that Africa is really on the cusp of great things, and that we've hit the knee in the curve, and things are about to take off in terms of productivity, economic growth, and livelihoods. And so we've created a new position that I have the privilege to assume just this next week in managing the business development opportunities in Africa, working with partners like Opportunity International and others to really scale up some very successful work that's been done by a lot of different groups in Africa. So we're very invested in this. We appreciate the opportunity to share that story. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning. It's great to be here with so many friends and old colleagues. I lead a consortium of large global food companies, General Mills, Cargill, Hershey Company. The 6 companies have about 700 years of experience, and we're sharing that with small and growing food companies across the continent of Africa with the goal to really improve the middle of the value chain. Opportunity obviously works a lot with farmers, which is needed and more of it. But if you're a farmer without a market, you're a gardener. And so we're really trying to work downstream to help the market, the food processors, the mills that can buy those crops from the farmers that Opportunities and others are financing. And so that middle of the value chain is key, just as it is working with the farmers. And so I think what we're seeing and is represented up here is really an increasing systems approach to food and ag in Africa and across the developing world. And that's what's really needed. Too often it's been about one link in the chain. As the Youngs, as farmers would tell you, if you don't have up or downstream what you need, you're not going to reach your full potential. So we're all about trying to stimulate that middle of the value chain and help the farmers by creating those markets and improve nutrition on the other side.
So we created the DeYoung Foundation a little over a year ago, and our mission is to empower dairy farmers worldwide. And what better way to do that than to partner with, to partner with Opportunity. We have seen that, so Africa has a lot of land, right? It has great people, passionate people that want to do things. And now it's just a matter of giving them the tools, the resources, the John Deere tractors, some of the resources with the food chain in order to make that happen. So they have a lot of the natural resources, and now it is all about education and getting them the tools that they need to be successful.
Sure. I think it's how do we touch it? I mean, we've been growing food our my whole life and understanding productivity. And sometimes we say productivity. I think we got to look at the whole thing and say what is it? What are we measuring it by? What do we understand? How we measure success in agriculture? And really, it's resources. And are we using our resources to maximize what we get out of what we put into it? And you look at carbon, look at that, and saying, okay, we don't know the answer, but through our experience we actually broke out virgin ground in Texas and had to develop it and start that from scratch and take it all the way to market. We've started milk cooperatives, built plants, and done those things. And I believe that just as you see the technology, we were talking earlier and said that Africa has been able to move quicker on the digital age because of their infrastructure, and they've leapfrogged. And I think that's the same thing that we have to do, and as we give back and saying we have to learn from thousands and thousands of people in Africa. And through Opportunity, that's the learnings we're going to get, and then we're going to give back and teach them as well and say, don't step in the same hole that we just stepped in. Don't hurt the environment the way we've hurt the environment, because we don't have to do that. We've got better learnings. We don't have to do that same path, and try to get it so we can leapfrog and we can get there. It took us in agriculture maybe 50 years to get there. I think with what we know in their systems and learning their way through thousands and thousands of these loans, we're going to find the gems out there that are going to know how to do it their way that works best. And that's what excites me about Opportunity. And if we can guide along the way, they're going to find their way, and they will leapfrog what we're doing in this country. And I believe that we have that role to play, a little piece.
Donald, are you reading off my notes? Wanted to interject in all of this and say that this isn't a story about, again, hunger and agriculture. Yes, it is, but the bigger picture. It's not about financial services and loans and savings. It's about inclusion. And it's bringing people into a system so they can define their own success. And for them, what does that mean? So there's a lot of hurdles in the way. So I'm actually going to pull aside Jeff Anderson and Alicia Black and ask them this question specifically. In terms of your work, in terms of your vision and what you've seen in the field, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges in this space in addressing agricultural development?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the two biggest challenges that come to mind right away are actually agricultural finance, which is, we said we were going to talk about finance, but you actually can't talk about agricultural development without thinking about the finance. So, and I think the financial system is also linked to the policy environment in some of these countries. So interest rates are extremely high in a lot of countries, prohibitively high, definitely for smallholder farmers, but even prohibitively high often for the sort of middle of the value chain players. So there's a policy reason for that. But even if you get the kind of the interest rate going, the delivery of that finance is really challenging. So if you don't have assets, it can be really challenging to look bankable. So I think that a lot of the work that Opportunity International is doing is really important, and John Deere and others in the private sector space are actually figuring out how to make the value chain work and use finance themselves to reach closer to the farmer. So I think that's one big gap. The other big gap is, I guess I would call it kind of delivery systems or distribution systems. So there's a lot of really cool technology out there. There's a lot of really good new seeds, new machinery, a lot of things that are out there. But they might be really far away from where you are. There may not be an agro dealer anywhere near you that can get it to you. Even if it is nearby, do you trust it? Do you think that it's clean seed or is it fraudulent seed? There's just a lot of, it's not the technology, it's how do you get it? And the how do you get it is linked back to who's financing it, who's distributing it. So there's still a gap, and people call it the last mile gap, but I think it's not even about the always physical distance, but is the product that you need where you are, is it tailored to your place, and can you get to it? Can you afford it? So those are the two big ones I would point out as finance and then distribution channels or delivery mechanisms, however you want to think about that.
Jeff?
Yeah, so Tim, thank you for including me on this question, and I'm sure it's obvious to everybody in the room that the answer is tractors, right? Mechanization.
Big green ones.
Big green
Big
ones.
green ones.
Oh, that's really all I have to say. Yeah. But it's a great question. I think if you had 100 different people up here that work in this space, you might get 95 different answers, and they would include things like infrastructure, logistics, financing, training, modern seeds, modern fertilizer, But the answer, in my opinion, is different than that. Because there are solutions for all those things today. They exist in Africa and around the world. It's about bringing them together all at the same time. You can't just bring mechanization into a geography if you don't have the modern seeds and fertilizer and the training, somebody to sell the increased production to be able to manage that without tremendous post-harvest loss and so forth. So it's really an ecosystem solution. And so my answer to this question is it's time to scale up these solutions in countries like Africa. And so to me, the answer is large-scale cooperation, collaboration, and investment funding to really leverage significant dollars into complete solutions into these geographies. And I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with Tim and John Magnay and Simona, I think she's in the back, and have this discussion. I think we're very aligned on this topic, and I really look forward to working with Opportunity going forward here as quickly as the week after next with some meetings in South Africa to talk about how do we bring lots of partners together, companies, NGOs, governments, et cetera, to make this happen on a large scale.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I think John and I are very much looking forward to that trip too. And that invitation goes out to everyone as well. We're going to be meeting in South Africa, so not to that meeting, but in general, we can stand up here and we can talk about clients, we can talk about farmers, we can talk about agriculture, we can talk about financial products, but the reality is coming out and seeing it for yourself. Spend a week with me, bumping down backcountry roads, talking to farmers, and that's where the vision comes from. That's where the passion comes from, and that's where the solutions come from. So to the solution side, so I want to pose this to Jeff Dykstra, Sherry, and Donald. What are some of the most successful solutions that you guys have seen in the space of agriculture and hunger? And this doesn't have to be African. This can be here in the States, anywhere in the world.
I think I'll jump off of what Jeff is saying. One of my favorite examples of this is a company in the eastern province of Zambia, a very food insecure region, where an individual came together, started working with farmers, and then realized that as they became more successful, they surrounded a national park. A lot of them were poachers. And as he started working with those farmers, they started growing more, and they started using better practices to do that, and then realized he needed a market, so he created the food company and began buying the offtake of these crops. And now supplies, I used to live in Zambia, I would buy peanut butter that came from South Africa. Now you can buy peanut butter in Zambia that comes from Zambian farmers. He started with a few thousand farmers. Today he sources from 160,000 farmers because he took a market systems approach all the way from the farmer to the consumer. And I think there's more and more recognition that that's what it's going to take. And we need Africa, the continent, to step up in that way if we are really going to feed the 9 billion people that should be on this planet in the coming years. So I'm excited that that's happening. It's fun even just to hear it up here. And there's a lot of opportunity there.
So as a farmer here in the United States that has not yet been to Africa, so we'll have to take
Come
you
on
up
down.
on that offer. You know, things that we do here, things that Donald and I personally do here is, you know, we have tried to be the, basically the, I don't know, the most efficient farmers that we can possibly be with our limited resources. And so by utilizing our resources to you know, produce a great product and making sure that it gets to the value chain where they can go on out and then feed people. But we know personally that we can help kind of move that along through volunteering, through creating a foundation, through being part of other businesses that also have those types of, you know, foundations. So we feel that you know, doing our part as farmers to make sure that we are learning the best practices and using the big John Deere tractors, that we can be as the most efficient farmers that we can possibly be and set the example and our teachings and our learnings to various others throughout the world.
Yeah, I would say really two specifics I say that we have success. One is again, what the opportunity to go in and learn organic dairy farming has taught us back to the art of crop rotation and proper crop rotation and what it does to your ecosystem. It's good. And it's a different set of resources, different set of skills, but it has led us to understanding what crops work better and when you monoculture, what happens. So that'd be one, and our productivity has increased. The second one there would be on antibiotic uses. Antibiotics are not bad. We're not anti-science. They are good. They're a tool that we need to have, but we have been using them, I would say, in the wrong way. But we were afraid to stop. And organically, we're not allowed to use it, so that wasn't a choice. And we had to learn a lot better, I would say, cow care health and prevention. And today, I'd say on our conventional farms, we've cut antibiotic use by over 80%. And it's really used for when the cow is sick and not for prevention. And it's those skills and how we apply that to the next person are two things that I think have really helped us and how we're going to address using our resources properly, how to use science properly. And then the last experience I would say would be, and I'm going to do a shameless plug here for Fairlife Milk. It's in about 90% of the stores right now. And it's a collaboration that us dairy farmers got together. There's about 36 families that are working together, and we said we have to figure something out because a gallon jug has been, you know, how many consumer packaged goods are sold in a gallon jug and have the same package for 30 years? Well, milk's that way. And why was our milk sales going down? Okay, so we set out and said we have to reinvent milk. We worked very hard together, and we were stubborn, but we couldn't get to market. All right. And what did we do? We collaborated with Coca-Cola, and our distribution exploded. We have a great product, and I think that's also the same thing when you start talking about how are the partnerships with businesses and corporations that have the size and scale to get done what needs to get done. And I think that's, again, how do we mine the best knowledges in Africa to do that same thing so they can explode?
I'll second the Fairlife plug. It's really good stuff. More protein, less sugar.
That's right.
All right, so for those of you who have worked with us in the field, and all this room included, I think you guys know that part of what work in the field entails is being able to pivot, change plan, change course. I'm looking at the timer. I'm going to scrap a couple of these questions and pivot for us real quick. I hope you're all okay with that. Sure. But the other thing we do in the field a lot, especially when working with farmers, is we talk in proverbs. So I think there's one other Chichewa speaker here in the room, Chikonde. How's your Chichewa these days? Still there? So Malawi, the local language is Chichewa, and one of my favorite proverbs that I work with farmers there is Mutu Modzi Susweza Denga. Chikonde, who's our new Women and Girls champion and program director. What does that mean in English? So direct translation is one head can't lift a roof by itself. You know, so we got a lot of heads here, and I can tell you we've got a lot of heads in the field. And to that last question was about collaboration and how do we work together. I think we've actually touched on all of that. I think we've all said our piece. But what I would like to invite is the rest of the heads that are here to help us lift this roof in terms of getting finance, training, technical assistance to farmers. And please come and visit us out in the field. If you can't make it that far, pull me aside on the coffee break, and I'd love to chat more. Thank you to our panel, and thank you all.